we can wave the flag, and Bob would be yelling at people, look, we've got the answer. And it's like, don't tell me. I'm too confused.
So Carolyn,
I have my own agenda. So
now, Carolyn, you witnessed it. When Katie picked us up and we had that long discussion in the traffic jam, she was wondering why all her 50-year-old buddies were writing books about their insignificant lives, but they thought it was significant because something happened to them, and they're all trying to make contact to have a TV show, which she was starting to do, and they were all envious of her.
Yeah.
So remember that? And then we led to one thing, and about an hour or two later, we figured out what it is. The only thing left for baby boomers and the younger thing is information capitalism. That's the only thing that is.
Information capitalism. They
so
all want to make a buck.
You have to make, you want to get a small audience, and there's a big millions of people. So you just get, 50,000 people, you got an income. So everybody's trying to be a life coach in some particular field and write a book, and then hopefully it becomes a movie. That's the big dream. And that's all there's left for Americans or the first world, capitalist world, is information capitalism. So everybody is a capitalist.
In the health industry, what you're saying.
Everywhere. Everybody's doing it is trying to get out there, and hopefully their shtick, their point of view gets taken, and then the publisher comes in, and they don't know that books are obsolete. Publishers hardly have anything going for them, and that's a bad
And they do a
medium.
reality TV show on it.
Yeah, so everybody knows. It's like Zappa said in 1980.
Yeah.
But the
Are you talking about Zappa? What Zappa said?
he said the media, that's all there is. And that was true. He said the media, that's all there is. He said in the mid-'80s. Everybody has to get into the media life. The endo means taking over. That's the new nature. That's where you express yourself, and that's where you get a connection. So then you have a calling card, and then you get a TV show or something.
So people are either freaked out by the media and don't know how to adapt, or they think a blog or a book is going to get them into it.
The slack is, if you can sell something, then you have your independent job, you can write when you want, you got an audience, and people buy your books, and you don't have to deal with bosses or schedules. So
that's what you guys are doing.
Oh yeah, well, we did it without
any. You're creating it like that.
Oh yeah, we're the
they want to be like you.
People hate us for it.
You're saying that's the new capitalism.
Yes, so software is the only thing for the first world. The second world is East Germany and the bureaucracy world of Brazil. They're trying to get into the first world through virtual capital. The third world is Mexico and the abandoned places. And the fourth world is the Aborigines. In the fourth world is the Aborigines. There's two fourth worlds. In the eco world, it's the Aborigines who have charisma because they're the original ESP and back to nature people. And but the fourth world in McLuhan terms is the electric world that goes around the first three worlds and obsolesces every one of them. So the information world is what everybody's trying to get into. It's the only ground to get some economy. And that's why it's a virtual economy. There's no hardware industries, nothing in the first world. And the people, by the time they're 50, I say this in one of the Roxana, by the time you're 40, most people in the first world recognize the information side of the repeating patterns. They notice how the movies and records are recycled, the music beds, and then they try to figure out what is interesting in this boring information society that I'm so familiar with. And then Roxana says ion. So we go into iondom. But aside from that...
So you're saying it's the first world, electrical world?
No, that's the fourth world that goes around the first three.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the first world is Goldman Sachs. Okay? The second world is Putin in the Russian bureaucracy world and their empire. And they're sort of semi-successful in the first capitalist world, but they're not completely. And then the third world is the undeveloped world. That's Brazil, Nicaragua, East Germany, and all the Brazil. And then the fourth world is the prima mobile, he says. This is an article he wrote in 1974 for the New York Times. And the prima mobile fourth world creates inflation in all the other worlds.
And it's recognized by all the first three worlds and affected by them.
It's recognized?
All the other worlds are affected by the fourth world.
Oh, yeah, that's the point. It goes around them and wrecks all three. And
that makes them all kind of android meme first, second, and third.
They all end up, selling the clone society.
And then they get android meme by the
global thing.
Yeah.
Now,
But then you said the fourth world. So
there's two fourth worlds. When you talk to William Thompson,
fourth worlds.
Yeah, there's a new. You mentioned fourth world. the Thompson quadrant, the eco-fascists will say, "Oh, that's the Aborigines, the Eskimos, the Inuit."
They think it goes deeper into culture.
No, they mean Aboriginal peoples is their term for fourth
but they're
world.
just thinking in terms of
People, chemical body.
not.
They don't know the McLuhan's fourth world is not the Aborigines, it's the electric world, which actually retrieves the charisma of the caveman world. That's why everybody wants to do ayahuasca and go to and hang out with Carlos Castaneda, or something. But there was
And
now you were saying the 3 levels. Okay.
Sorry, then how about what we're seeing in the religious fundamentalism in all
Each
of these
culture
other
tries to
countries?
preserve itself for the tourist trade. So that's what these people are. Very Christian. The Bible. We're printing press people. The only culture built on the printing press is American. So we go back to your first book. And so you have to be a fundamentalist Christian to support visual Gutenberg values. That's the media fundamentalism America.
Now we're seeing all of this religious fundamentalism in Pakistan. India,
They're
Afghanistan.
celebrating their manuscript culture.
That's about to say that. 'Cause
Not
they've
printing
gone
press.
back to their book.
Yeah,
That's all
to the
they
manuscript, and it's more tribal and oral, and they're fanatic, and Americans would not commit suicide for the group, but the tribal peoples who are trying to retrieve manuscript and earlier stuff will commit suicide for the group, like the
So
Japanese
for the
did.
people who are living their life based on the Quran, who are illiterate,
No, they're pre-literate, semi-literate. The
affected
literacy
by it.
comes in the printing press.
correct?
It's still its medieval culture is still oral and visual balanced.
So they're living medieval
Yeah.
based on the Quran and the interpretation that they're being given by the mullahs.
They're
who
authoritarian, like the medieval when the Catholic Church ran the show. The authorities tell the people how to be religious.
Sure.
You don't do that in Protestantism in the printing book world. You create your own faith. You
Right,
read
but,
the Bible.
but Catholicism was there 400 years ago. The Crusades.
Oh, yeah,
Go out
yeah.
and kill for Jesus,
Yeah.
and you'll go to heaven. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
It's just we did it 400 years ago.
Well, 800 with the Catholics. The Protestant Church altered that. You get individual light, individual faith, and then you have all the sects, and then they think the Vatican's
But I
the
was
beast.
referring to the Crusades.
Yeah, that's 1,000 years ago.
That was 1,000
Yeah,
years ago.
yeah. They started in 1099, I think.
Okay.
So Bob, let me say, so what you observed in all the countries in Europe, that it's all layered by tourism.
Yeah.
There's a top layer of tourism. Is that the fourth world?
No, that's the first world.
First?
That's all okay, so what are these 3 countries being wrecked by the electric information environment?
Right.
The third world cannot get into old hardware industry, which is LaRouche's program, because the first world doesn't have a hardware industry. We do ship some of it out there, but it's too slow. Everybody gradually has to be in the information capitalism world. So they all have to go first world. So the third world getting to second world bureaucracy and industry is not going to happen. The second world can't get the first world because they're too bureaucratic.
So go over what's first, second, and third again.
First is the Goldman Sachs, the Western capitalism. Money and robber barons, industries,
Right.
the banking, corporate leaders.
Okay.
That's the first world, which is the white Anglo-Saxon establishment.
Yeah. So
And
that's where tourism is the first world, because it's all about money. Trying
no,
to keep
tourism
the
is the
economy
fourth world, where everybody's going
going.
around
That's
the
what
world.
I asked, and you said it was first. I asked if it was fourth.
Well, no, it keeps the first world going. The money thing, the
It's like
obsolete money.
tourism is a requirement
Yeah,
of the first.
all
first
cultures.
Right.
So Brazil can't get any hardware industries going, so they only sell themselves to tourists. So everybody from all the world goes to Brazil
And-
to live the image that's in the ads of Brazil.
Right,
So
and
everybody's
that's-
marketing icons.
And that's where we keep saying that cold fusion is going to change all that, because all those countries that don't have
Money.
etc., they'll get cold fusion and bypass all the industrial age that we've had to go through and ruin
That they
our-
can't get to.
Yes, and Evergreen said,
Like the cell
Carolyn,
phones.
Evergreen said that electricity would become so cheap that you would air condition your barn, your farmer's field, almost.
Yeah.
So they'd make their money on the air conditioner because it would cost nothing to run it.
And that's
So
what
there's the
our
Brazil
cold
there.
plate does.
And
We
that's what
create
Brazil's
excessive
gonna get.
free electricity.
Yeah, so you'd
Yeah.
air condition your mud hut.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
air
even
conditioning
now,
for your ears. Little air conditioned batteries for your ears, or for your eyelids, or for your hair. Little tiny chip.
the big
air
battle with
Your vagina.
even. Yeah.
But so you have to see the dynamic that the fourth world, which was the analog phase after World War II, but then you get the digital phase by the 80s, and that's a replay of the fourth world, and it's the fifth world, it's the pentad, and it's a world living for itself. Nobody, not even the first world gets any advantage in.
Oh, he's quit.
Okay, listen, so what did the Evergreen say years ago? How does the oligarchy rule? They smear the country so they don't have tourism. Most countries require the dollars to come from tourism, and all you have to do is put up a story. Okay, IBS for Dummies came from.
But then the oligarchy in Egypt would be the terrorist groups.
What?
The oligarchy in Egypt 15 years ago were the terrorist groups because Egypt
ruined Egypt
crashed
for a while. Yeah.
because of one fucking bombing somewhere.
As McLuhan, it's interesting. Way back in the 40s, he says the Western imagination regards life as a museum because visual space goes around the planet and collapses nature and makes it dead. Okay, so then everything is ruined, so the whole world becomes a museum. So first world capitalism, all it really had was the deep archetype that Western literate people, first world people regard the world as a museum, so they turn it into a tourist museum, a global museum. And that's a main metaphor in Fitting Its Wake. You're being guided through a museum, which goes through all different media. So that's the key thing. Tourism is the main industry in the world.
So what was the last known oligarchy in the States based on what the Evergreens said to you? We're just presuming that's the
in the state, the oligarchy was
like the last...
The royalties that got in trouble after World War I.
The royal
families and the turning taxes people on the people I work with.
So that was the last real oligarchy.
Yeah, now what happened from 1930 to 1980, it was the American century. So Rockefeller lent money all over the world.
Sure.
The Morgans, the combine of American oligarchy.
Well, he was affecting the economy. He was affecting
They created global welfare.
That's correct.
AID, they would send money all over the world. And sneaking up on them was the digital speed up that went past accounting where we gave you this so you owe us back. And the oil the oil crisis in the 70s affect too. So by the late 70s, the third world countries could not pay back their debts to the American combine. Yeah. So they were bankrupt.
And you remember when the Evergreens said people would actually own a country? Do you remember that when
Who said that?
The Evergreens, when we had those feature sessions that George had?
Yeah.
They said people would actually be owning an entire country.
Right.
And at the time we were like, what? Well, there's what you just said.
That's
right, because all the money they lent them through the World Bank.
They kept money. Money was obsolete in 1929 because electric environment took over. Radio was the real currency, and then the Western oligarchy couldn't handle the obsolescence of their money, gold, cash, and credit, so they had to give it away. The global welfare state, make people use it.
That's what the World Bank did.
Yeah. So McLuhan said in the 30s, money became public property.
Right.
It was the oligarchies had money when it was private property. So it spread around the world, but the digital Android meme was starting to speed up in the 70s, so then things got faster than the accounting books could keep up, and then the third world got bankrupted by that stuff, and the energy crisis, so they couldn't pay back the Rockefellers.
And it didn't have the power of control.
You've got to get this. They didn't get their money back, so Rockefellers had nothing.
Right.
So by 1981, the only people who had money were the oligarchy, because they never lent money, they only invested. And they invested for 300 or 400 or 500 years, so they had lots of solid stuff, but they couldn't keep up with the American mass market effect of movies, radio, and TV, which was the American century. So that's why Prince Charles lady died, so he could go forward representing the oligarchies around the city of London.
Yes.
And then they started lending money all through the 80s, and they kept the revival, the junk bond and revival of the 80s. They kept the money thing going, but then the the internet and the weird Android meme, which I say was the after-Android meme after 1990. When everybody got involved in the Android meme, money had one supernova in the late 90s, then crashed. The dot-com, bomb. And that was the end of it. And it took 8 years before it really hit home, and then not money was dead, credit was dead. That's 2008.
And then the Queen came over to try to treat the gold.
Their own gold. Like they were all ripping off gold or whatever was going on. That's documented by Beater and a bit by Chris Story, though the story was a little off.
And then, so when they were forgiving the debt of an entire country through the World Bank, they had to do that because they weren't getting any money anyway.
There was no money anyways.
It's
and
just
they lived on
paper.
no money from 2000 after Y2K. Yeah. I mean, that sold a lot of computers, and that was a .com, and then .bomb, and then they had 8 years of nothing, and a president who didn't read or anything that was Post Information Society, and he's just winking and saying, go shopping, and which is the fundamentalism, American fundamentalism.
That's right. Let's say General Motors was a Motors.
And they had the Iraq War to cover making up money for no reasons. They had to have a war to keep money going for a patriotic reason. So they did.
Well, it keeps people employed through the war machine thing.
So they had a stupid war that was just stopgap, nothing to do for anything. That's why they didn't pay
and
the
that's
military
what Thatcher
guys,
did to the
private
Falkland Islands.
guys. No, that's 83. This is 2000. This is after 2000. And so the private mercenary guys were doing better than the official
Blackwater.
Marines and that.
Blackwater.
So that was a total disaster through the 2000s. So it was like there was a desert at 2000. I say we moved into retrieved anthropomorphic physical post-information society, but it never hit reality till 2008.